Dating's also ultimately about how people come together in the world. And so our mission isn't just to make dating apps safer, it's to make dating safer. On dating apps, it's all about those one-on-one connections.
Why isn't it possible for others to have something like this? Our social media would be such a clean place,
In India, we work closely with the Center for Social Research to understand what we can do to help keep everybody on our services safe. It would be impossible for a human to review, or a team of humans, or hundreds of humans to review and ban 44 fake accounts every minute. It has to be something we do with AI and machine learning.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. This time we're going to talk about trust and safety, and that's something which is very intrinsic to almost everything we do on the internet. And where better to start than at the Match Group, which tries to match a lot of people across the world, with products like Tinder and a lot of other products across the world. So we have with us Yoel Roth, who's the VP of Trust and Safety at Match Group. So Yoel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'll start with a very generic question. You've worked with social media platforms before. How important is trust and safety when you think of a platform which is maybe not really in the social media space? It's maybe a little bit more inward looking, right? When you are talking about a Tinder, for instance.
When we think about dating apps, trust is really at the foundation of everything that we do and everything that we build. When you're making the decision about whether to meet up with somebody face to face, there's a lot that goes into that choice. Do you like them? Do you like how they look? Do you share interests? Do you live near each other? But then also, do you feel safe? And so when we build our apps, our technology, our policies, our operations, it's all built with the goal of helping our members feel confident and safe when they make that decision to take the step of meeting face to face and connecting for that first time.
Yeah.
And so I would say, in a lot of contexts in social media, trust and safety is important for business. It's important for helping people feel safe expressing themselves. But when it comes to dating, there is no substitute for deep and foundational investment in trust and safety.
True. So ultimately, the base of the relationship is the trust, right? Which is maybe not the case when you're talking about social media.
Yeah, for us, trust begins with being confident that the person you're talking to is real. For years, we've heard about the phenomenon of catfishing online.
Yes.
One of the most important elements of our work is helping people know that the people they're talking to on a dating app are actually real people, and that the person you're talking to looks like the pictures on their profile. And that's a very complicated and difficult task. Every minute, we remove more than 44 accounts from our apps that we identify as fake or inauthentic. It's a constant tide of fake accounts that are targeting dating apps, and we have to deploy both human review and advanced AI to try to get rid of them and keep the people using our apps safe.
At the time of setting up these guidelines, when it comes to trust and safety, are you also looking at a lot of stuff that is maybe common across the internet as such, or do you have to build something for a dating app ground up? Is it very unique?
There's some elements of trust and safety on dating apps that are unique, and some elements that are shared across the internet and across social media generally. So let me talk a little bit about our overall approach to policy development, and then we can get into some of the things that are unique about dating apps.
Yeah, sure.
The foundation of our work on trust and safety is rooted in deeply understanding what our members are looking for. I think we can't build apps that serve the needs of our community if we don't understand what the needs of that community actually are. Let me give you a piece of data from India specifically. When we did a survey of daters in India, we found that 65% of young daters in India said that seeing a verification mark on the profile of somebody they're connecting with would make that person more attractive to them. They'd be more likely to go on a date. And so what that tells us is that having verification features in our product is really critical for making a service like Tinder attractive to young daters in India. And across the board, we use those kinds of insights to inform the policies that we're developing, how we enforce them, and then how we adapt them to the different countries in which we operate. So we start with research. From there, a big part of what we're developing is the technology to put those rules into practice. So we have to understand what it is that people are doing on our service and how that behavior is changing and adapting over time so that we can make sure that we're tailoring the way that our services are put into practice to those services. And then finally, we work closely with a global network of experts to continually refine our policies, our products, and our technology to keep pace with the state of the industry and the best available expert knowledge. In India, we work closely with the Center for Social Research to understand what we can do to help keep everybody on our services safe and offer tailored resources to the people who are using our apps. And so that's really the foundation of what we do generally. But let me talk a little bit about some of the ways that dating apps work differently than some other types of social media.
Yeah.
The most important thing to note on dating apps is that there's not really a concept of virality or posting to get attention. When we think
Mhm.
about social media, so much of it is about getting those likes and getting followers. On dating apps, it's all about those one-on-one connections. And that
Yeah.
changes the types of content that we see. Things like misinformation just don't come up as often in the context of dating apps because dating apps aren't really a good place to advocate for an idea. They're a place where you can meet somebody who you share views with already. In contrast, a lot of our trust and safety work is focused on helping people feel safe when they make those connections face to face. So once you've chatted with somebody on one of our apps and you make the decision to meet up in person, a lot of the work we do on trust and safety is about how we make that in-person connection as safe as possible. I'll give you one example of a feature we make available in that context. In Tinder, we have a feature called Share My Date that when you make that decision to meet up with somebody face to face, lets you provide information about the date you're going on to a trusted third party, so to a friend or a family member. That's something that wouldn't really be relevant in the context of most social media, but we hear from our users that it's a really important part of how they feel safe forming those in-person connections in the context of a dating app.
So you mentioned how you take down a lot uh, of fake profiles um, on a daily basis. So, are you looking for patterns? Like, I remember conversations with WhatsApp a few years back where, they know a certain type of behavior means, this is malified intent, right? So are you looking for those kind of patterns? And are those patterns different in different parts of the world? Do you see some things unique in a market like India compared to a market like the US, which is your biggest market? So how do you look at those patterns? And how much is technology helping you with that? Because in catching patterns, especially AI, is very good.
Absolutely. The foundation of, I would say, any platform's work to combat fake accounts and bots has to be looking at behavior. One of the ways we talk about
Yeah,
this in the trust and safety field is thinking about actors, behavior, and content. And a lot of times when we talk about trust and safety, we focus just on the content, on what shows up in a profile or in people's messages. But when we're talking about fake accounts, it's actually the behavior that's much more important. Things like what IP addresses are they signing up from? Things like, are there multiple accounts that all have the same type of information? Or do we see the same
yeah.
photo showing up in a number of different places at once? And using those types of behavioral signals, it makes it possible for us to find fake accounts without needing to look at each and every one by one. It would be impossible for a human to review or a team of humans or hundreds of humans to review and ban 44 fake accounts every minute. It has to be something we
Yeah.
do with AI and machine learning, which is why those types of automated tools are the foundation of all of the work that we do to keep bots off of our platforms.
So the other thing I want to ask you is about AI. AI is a great boon for you when you are sort of policing a platform like yours. But it's also creating a lot of new use cases, right? Because when you look at identity, for instance, right, it is possible to completely fake an identity. And we have seen how, especially in a market like India, it's used for a lot of scams. So are you encountering this kind of use cases on Tinder? How do you get on top of something like that?
Yeah. When we think about AI, I think it's important to recognize that these new technologies can be used for incredible good and as a really cool way to help people connect, and also as a way for people to carry out harm and scams. And so we think
Yeah.
about both of those uses. Um, One of the ways that we've built AI into our products as a useful feature is to help people pick their best profile photo. So we hear from a lot of people that when you're signing up for a dating app, like you don't really know which picture of you is the best one. We think AI can help with that. And so we offer AI powered features that help people on Tinder pick their best photo. We also know that Gen Z in particular are really open to the idea of using AI to help them draft some of the content on their profile. Like, I'm not Gen
Yeah.
Z, I'm a millennial, but I hate writing about myself. I find it a little bit awkward. And so we hear that actually about a third of Gen Z daters suggest that Gen AI would be helpful to them in figuring out how to write a dating profile. And so that's really cool. We can think of ways to make it easier for people to express themselves and connect. But of course, there's exactly the risk you were talking about, which is if people are using Gen AI to help them draft their profile, how do we know that bad actors aren't going to use it to make scams and fraud even more convincing? And so we constantly have to stay aware of those potential risks and threats and try to stay ahead of them as best we can. One of the most important ways we stay ahead of those threats is by building collaborations with other tech companies. Last year, Match Group launched the Tech Against Scams Coalition, which brings together social media companies, dating apps, and financial services companies to adopt a shared posture of combating scams and frauds wherever they emerge online. A big part of this is talking about new behavioral trends that we see. So, if we see a certain group of bad actors that have started using a certain type of AI or automation to carry out their behavior, we can talk about that. We can say how we're detecting it, and we can all collectively get better at combating that fake activity. And so you can imagine a world in the future where we can work with AI companies who might say, hey, we are seeing people who look like they're writing dating profiles on our apps. Why don't we send you over what they're writing? And then we can use that to detect those accounts on our end and work together as a tech industry to combat this type of inauthentic behavior. Those are the collaborations I think are the most important when we're talking about a big risk like generative AI.
The other thing I want to learn from you is that we are in a situation where most of the social media platforms, for instance, are almost hands off when it comes to customer support, right? And it's very different from how it used to be a few years back. So how do you, and in your case, that trust is a lot to do with the user trust, how the user trusts the platform. So how do you work on that? How do you help a user who is maybe who needs uh, support? Maybe something has happened on the app or they're not able to figure things out. So how do you work with them, and do you also work with law enforcement in some way?
Yeah. Let me start with customer service because I
Yeah.
really I think this is such a critical point. I think a lot of tech companies have taken their customers for granted. And in
Yes.
our line of work and in our business, we can't do that. Our business fundamentally is rooted in people loving our products and then telling their friends about it. The vast majority of our revenue as a business doesn't come from ads. It comes from people choosing to pay for our apps. And they make that choice even though you can use our apps for free. And so we see that people use our apps, try them, like them, find them valuable, and then choose to subscribe, choose to engage with our a la carte options. And ultimately, that's what drives our success as a business. And that means we have to build customer service into every single thing that we do. One of the ways we do that is by being proactive with our users. A lot of tech companies accept reports from their users if something goes wrong, but you'll hear trust and safety teams talk about how they try to drive down the number of reports. We actually take the
Yeah.
opposite view. We try to make it as easy as possible for people to report. For example, we have an AI powered feature called Does This Bother You? Where if our AI detects that you might have just gotten a message that is inappropriate or that might be harmful, we encourage you to report. We actually pop up a message in the app saying, hey, does this message bother you? And if so, click here and you can report it right away. We actually want people to report more if they're encountering something that our AI detects as potentially harmful. And all of that is part of a process of really bringing people into an experience where they feel supported by us, they know how to get in contact with us, and ultimately they're having those kinds of positive experiences that make them love using our apps. The other side of your
So,
question was that,
yeah.
oh, go ahead. I was going to just
No,
touch on
no,
the law
no.
enforcement piece. Yeah.
No, it's fine.
No, so
It's fine. Please go ahead.
um, yeah, our work with global law enforcement is a key part of our trust and safety efforts, right? Like law, when we think about some of the harms that might come up in the context of online dating, whether it's scams and fraud or sexual assault and violence, I think the most important thing that can happen isn't just banning a bad actor from a dating app, it's getting them arrested and prosecuted. I want bad guys behind bars in jail, not on dating apps. And so we do that not just by proactively monitoring for them on our services, we also work with law enforcement in India and around the world to support their investigations whenever there's an investigation into harmful activity. Especially when we're talking about scams and fraud, we also know that this activity is backed by sophisticated criminal enterprises, which is why we work to build proactive relationships with law enforcement where we'll tell them about the trends that we're seeing, we'll share information with them proactively, and we'll support their efforts to shut down some of these large scam networks proactively.
So the other side of this coin is that you have a lot of safety features, and, and you keep rolling out new features. How do you make your users aware that there are these things that are there to protect them? How do you so you mentioned about how the AI pops up a message saying, hey, does this bother you? But you would need to do that more proactively, depending on the context, right?
Yeah, that's right. I a safety feature is only effective if people know about it. And
Know
so
about it,
a
yeah.
lot of what we do is make our safety features as easy to access and as overt in our apps as possible. In Tinder, we have a comprehensive safety center you can access right in the app that gives you all of the details of our safety features, how they work, how-to guides, and then also critically access to a lot of the safety resources we've developed with our partners around the world, including in India. So some of the safe dating guides that we've developed with the Center for Social Research in India are available right in the Safety Center in our app, and we make it as easy as possible for people to get access to that. But it's also baked into the product experience. So, for example, on Tinder, we have a feature called Are You Sure? That if we see somebody writing a message that we think might be offensive, we actually don't just wait for them to send that message and then get reported and banned. We actually prompt the user to reconsider sending an offensive message before they send it. And we see that 1 in 5 people who see one of those prompts actually choose to change their behavior and not send the message. We've shown hundreds of millions of these prompts worldwide, and we see consistently that the people using our apps, if you prompt them, will change their behavior and ultimately become better actors. This is ultimately in service of our goal of encouraging people to be more respectful with the way that they interact. Like dating is a technology question, it's a product question, it's a policy question, and I love working on those issues. But dating's also ultimately about how people come together in the world. And so our mission isn't just to make dating apps safer, it's to make dating safer. And that includes shaping people's behavior to make dating more respectful and more rooted in consent so that when people choose to meet up face to face, they're doing so with the confidence that they're going to be treated safely and respectfully.
I, you know, I'm actually impressed that you have a feature like that, and I'm wondering why isn't it possible for others to have something like this? Our social media would be such a clean place, it would have much more positivity than it has now, and it could sort of prevent people from going away from these platforms, which has been happening across the world?
I would love to see every social media site adopt a feature like this. When I worked at Twitter, we actually built a feature that would nudge people if we saw them
Hmm.
writing an abusive tweet. And we published a peer-reviewed academic article sharing the results of that feature, where again, we saw that sometimes up to 30% of people who got one of these nudges chose not to send an abusive message just because we prompted them. I I think that's magic, right? Like we're not
Yeah.
talking about censorship, we're not talking about banning. We're talking about just encouraging people to be a little bit more respectful, and we see that people are. I I want every tech company in the world to steal features like Are You Sure? Take what we're doing, learn from it, build it, and I really think it can make the internet a better and more respectful place.
So if I can ask you one last question, it sort of stems from what you're saying, but uh, of course you're nudging, of course you are helping people report, but do you still need to get into moderation at some point? You know, often you might see things that you don't want to see on your platform.
Absolutely. Even as our goal is to make it so that people choose not to engage in disrespectful behavior and that everybody shows up safely, we know that sometimes things will go wrong or that people will just have mismatched expectations. And so we have a global trust and safety team that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to monitor for potentially harmful activity on our service and protect our members whenever an issue comes up. The foundation of how we think about success in the moderation space is reducing the burden on people who have experienced some type of harm online. My mission is to make it so that if something bad happens to you on a dating app, you actually don't need to report it to us. We're happy for you to report it. We build reporting tools that make it easy and seamless and supportive. But my goal is that nobody should have to report. Right now, about 90% of the content moderation actions we take happen proactively without the need for a user to report it. I want to get that number up to 100%. I don't think we'll ever get there, but that's the goal.
Yeah.
And ultimately for us, that's the core work of trust and safety. Starting at the beginning, build a product that is hard to misuse, make a product that is more resilient to abuse and misuse. Second, build the technology that you need to try to shape behavior. Third, proactively identify harm and try to remove it as quickly as you can. Fourth, offer reporting so that people have an easy way to get in touch with you if something goes wrong. Those are the building blocks of trust and safety. And I'm really proud of the ways that we've built each of those four things into the dating apps we offer in India and around the world.
And to sort of sum it up, I think the 4 points that you sort of underlined, it could be the essence of trust and safety across the internet. It doesn't have to be limited to a dating app or a social media app, because I think these 4 points work, it works wonderfully well for anybody who has an internet product. And on that note, Yoel, thanks for being on the show. It was fascinating hearing you explain your trust and safety policies.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you were listening to Yoel Roth of the Match Group. We'll be back again next week with another guest and lot more knowledge and insights. Till then, we are everywhere you listen to our pods.